The locked drawer wasn't what made my hands shake. It was the airline receipt I found tucked underneath. One way to Grand Cayman, departing the day after our honeymoon was supposed to end. No return flight, and my name wasn't on it. I stood in Cameron's home office in our Georgetown townhouse, the locksmith's bill still warm in my pocket, staring at documents that rewrote my entire future. Outside, Washington, D.C. buzzed with its usual rhythm, politicians rushing to meetings, tourists photographing monuments, the city moving forward while my world stopped cold. 48 hours until my wedding, 300 guests, the National Cathedral booked, my grandmother's vintage Vera Wang already altered to fit my frame, and here I was, holding proof that the man I was supposed to marry had been planning his exit before we even said I do. My name is Naomi Laurent. I'm 34 years old, a venture capitalist who spent the last decade building a portfolio that makes headlines, but none of that matters when you're standing in your fiancé's office realizing you're not his bride, you're his mark. Let me back up because you need to understand how a woman like me, careful, strategic, 3 steps ahead in every boardroom, ended up here. Welcome back to Her Value Stories, where every story is a reminder that love, loss, and resilience visit us all, no matter where we come from or what we carry. We may never know when life will change, or why certain hearts are tested, but every moment holds meaning worth telling. If you're new here, take a second to subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss the stories that stay with you long after the screen goes dark. And to our returning hearts, thank you. Your presence is what gives these stories their voice. Stay with us until the very end, share your thoughts in the comments, and let us know where you're watching from. Now, let us continue. 4 years earlier. My grandmother, Josephine Laurent, built an empire on Connecticut Avenue when Black women weren't supposed to own property in D.C., let alone entire blocks of it. She survived Jim Crow, buried 2 husbands, and raised my mother alone while flipping her first property. By the time she passed 5 years ago, she'd left me an $8 million trust, a historic brownstone, and one warning that echoed in my head constantly. Baby girl, women like us are magnets for the wrong kind of attention. You'll need to learn the difference between a man who sees you and a man who sees your portfolio. I'd rolled my eyes then. Thought she was paranoid, old-fashioned, unable to accept that I could find genuine love. Turns out Grandma Jo was right about everything. I met Cameron Hartwell 3 years ago at a venture capital mixer at the Smithsonian. I was exhausted from fending off men who opened conversations by asking about my family connections and closed them by suggesting investment opportunities. Then Cameron appeared, tall, warm smile, easy laugh, and asked about the sculpture behind me instead of my last name. He said he was a financial consultant, new to D.C., just trying to make connections. He didn't mention money once that entire first conversation. Instead, he asked about my favorite books, where I went to undergrad, whether I thought the Nationals had a shot that season. Looking back, that should have been my first red flag. What financial consultant moves to Washington without researching the major players? The Laurent name is on 3 buildings downtown, but I was tired of obvious fortune hunters, and here was this charming man treating me like a person, not a portfolio. We dated for 8 months. He was attentive, thoughtful, remembered details. He insisted on paying for dinners even though I could have bought the restaurant. He seemed so genuine. My mother, Diane, saw through him immediately. After their first meeting, she pulled me into the kitchen. "Something's wrong with that man." "What are you talking about?" "His smile doesn't reach his eyes, Naomi. And he watches you like you're a math problem he's solving." "You're being paranoid." "I'm being your mother." We fought about Cameron constantly. Eventually, we just stopped talking. 6 months of cold silence between me and the woman who raised me, all because I chose to believe my boyfriend over my own blood. Spoiler alert, Mom was right too. Cameron proposed after a year, right in front of the Lincoln Memorial at sunset. Photographers just happened to be there. His fraternity brothers just happened to show up with champagne. It felt spontaneous, romantic, perfect. Now I realize he'd staged the entire thing. The photos went semi-viral. DC's power couple, some blog called us. He wasn't proposing to me, he was marketing our relationship. 48 hours before the wedding. The past few weeks, something had shifted. Cameron kept his phone face down constantly. New password I didn't know. He took calls outside, came back saying, "work stuff," changed the subject before I could ask questions. The wedding planning fell entirely on me. He claimed he was swamped with client emergencies, but financial consultants don't have emergencies at 11 p.m. on a Saturday, unless he had clients in Tokyo, which he definitely didn't. Then there were the requests about money. Subtle at first, then increasingly urgent. "We should add me to your trust. What if something happens during delivery when we have kids? I need to be able to access funds." Power of attorney is just practical. Every married couple does it. "Your grandmother's house is beautiful, but it's too big for 2 people. We should sell it, invest the money properly." I know exactly which funds would maximize returns. The man wanted me to sell my grandmother's home, the house where 5 generations of Laurent women had lived, and let him invest the proceeds. This is the same man who forgot to pay our water bill 3 months in a row because he had too much on his mind. When I said no, gently and carefully, Cameron became someone else. Cold. Distant. He started sleeping on the far edge of our bed. The arguments multiplied. He'd bring up the trust. I'd refuse. He'd give me the silent treatment for days. One night, I woke at 2 a.m. to find him gone. I found him in his office, hunched over his phone, speaking in whispers. 48 hours, then everything's in motion. The trust transfer happens week 2 of the honeymoon. She's already signed the preliminary documents. My blood went cold. No. She suspects nothing. She's too in love to see straight. Yeah, V already has the tickets. I'll be in Grand Cayman before she realizes what happened. I stood in that hallway, my hand over my mouth to keep from making a sound, and felt my entire world tilt. He saw me, hung up immediately. "Work emergency," he said, voice smooth as silk. "Go back to bed, honey." I didn't ask who has work emergencies about trust transfers and tickets at 2 a.m. I was too shocked, too pregnant with dread, too desperate to believe I'd misheard. The next morning, my cousin Kennedy showed up unannounced. "We need to talk," she said, pulling me into the garden. "I hired someone to look into Cameron." "You did what?" "I'm sorry, Nay, but something about him has always felt off. Remember when he said he grew up in Richmond but didn't know Monument Avenue? When he claimed he went to UVA but couldn't name a single professor?" I'd explained those away. Maybe he had a bad memory. Maybe he wanted to forget his college years. "I hired a forensic accountant," Kennedy continued. "His name is Tobias Mercer. He specializes in fraud detection. And Naomi, you need to hear what he found." That's when I met Tobias. He was waiting at a coffee shop in DuPont Circle, late 30s, sharp eyes, dressed like someone who'd rather be anywhere else. He slid a folder across the table without preamble. "Your fiancé's real name is Cameron Briggs," he said. "He's been engaged 4 times in the past 6 years, each time to a woman with significant family wealth. Each time he disappeared within months of the wedding." I stared at the documents. Different names, different faces, same pattern. "He has $340,000 in gambling debts," Tobias continued. "Online poker, sports betting, private lenders who don't file paperwork with the IRS, the kind of people who get creative when you don't pay." My hands were shaking. 2 days ago, I tracked down one of his exes. Her name is Vanessa Pierce. She lives in Seattle. She lost $200,000 to him and never pressed charges. Too humiliated, too broken. She's willing to talk to you. I looked up at this stranger who just detonated my life. "Why are you doing this?" His expression softened slightly. "Because someone should have done it for my ex-wife before she used me for a green card and disappeared. I became a forensic accountant so people like Cameron don't get away with it." "What does he want from me?" Tobias pulled out more documents. "Your family trust. He's planning to pressure you to add him as a beneficiary after the wedding, then file for divorce in a state with favorable asset division laws. If that doesn't work, he'll fake a medical or family emergency requiring immediate access to funds, then vanish. The Grand Cayman ticket. That's his exit strategy. I felt like I was drowning. There's one more thing, Tobias said carefully. I need you to look at something. He opened his laptop, turned it toward me. Security camera footage from a hotel in Arlington. Date stamped 3 weeks ago. Cameron walking into a room. A woman following him, not me. Her name is Brianna. She's his assistant. This has been going on for 8 months. I sat in that coffee shop for an hour, looking at evidence that the man I'd agreed to marry was a con artist with a pattern, gambling debts, and a girlfriend. Kennedy reached for my hand. Nay, I'm so sorry. I pulled my hand back, not because I was angry at her, because I was angry at myself. My grandmother warned me. My mother warned me. Hell, my own gut warned me every time Cameron's smile didn't quite reach his eyes. But I wanted to be loved so badly, wanted to believe someone could see me, not my last name, that I ignored every single red flag he planted. What do I do? I whispered. Tobias leaned forward. You have 2 options. Walk away quietly. Cancel the wedding, get a lawyer, let him move on to his next target. Or burn him down. Something shifted in my chest, something cold and sharp and absolutely certain. I thought about my grandmother, who'd faced down racist landlords and corrupt politicians and men who thought a black woman couldn't possibly own what she'd built. I thought about Vanessa, who'd lost $200,000 and her faith in love. I thought about the next woman Cameron would target if I let him walk away clean. What would burning him down look like? I asked. Tobias smiled slightly. That depends. How do you feel about public humiliation? If you've ever ignored your gut because you wanted something to be true so badly, drop a comment. I need to know I'm not alone in this. Kennedy made a call. 30 minutes later, we were sitting in a private room at Founding Farmers with Vanessa Pierce, the woman from Seattle who'd lost everything to Cameron. She was younger than me, maybe 29, with the kind of exhaustion that comes from carrying shame for years. Thank you for coming, I said. Vanessa nodded. When Kennedy's contact reached out, I almost didn't respond. I spent 3 years trying to forget Cameron existed, but then I thought, if I can stop him from doing this to someone else, maybe those 3 years weren't completely wasted. She told me her story. Cameron had targeted her after her father's death. She'd inherited $400,000, not generational wealth like mine, but enough to catch his attention. He love-bombed her, proposed after 6 months, married her in a small courthouse ceremony. 2 weeks later, he convinced her to invest in a can't-miss opportunity that required immediate cash. She transferred $200,000. He disappeared 3 days later. I never pressed charges, Vanessa said, voice breaking. I was so humiliated. My family had warned me he was moving too fast. I thought they were just being overprotective. I thought I knew better. I reached across the table, took her hand. You're not the one who should be ashamed. Neither are you, she said, but you have something I didn't. Time. You found out before the wedding. You can still stop this. Tobias pulled up a timeline on his laptop. Here's what I think is happening. Cameron planned to marry you, spend the 2-week honeymoon in Bali. How did you know we're going to Bali? Your Instagram. He's counting on you posting photos, showing the world everything's perfect. Meanwhile, he'll pressure you to sign documents adding him to your trust. He's probably already drafted them, waiting for the right moment when you're relaxed, in love, on a beach somewhere. My stomach turned. Week 2 of the honeymoon. The paperwork goes through. Week 3, he manufactures a crisis. A sick parent, maybe. A business emergency. Something that requires him to return home early. He asks you to transfer emergency funds to an account he controls. Then he disappears. The Grand Cayman ticket, I said quietly. No extradition treaty with the U.S. for financial crimes under a certain threshold. He'd be gone, and there's nothing you could do about it. Vanessa's eyes were filled with tears. He told me his mother had cancer, needed experimental treatment. I wired $50,000 before I even questioned it. His mother is alive and well in Baltimore. I checked after he disappeared. I looked at these two people, strangers 48 hours ago, who were trying to save me from the same trap. "What's your plan?" I asked Tobias. "Honestly, I was hoping you'd have one." I sat back, mind racing. Canceling the wedding would be the easy choice, the safe choice. I'd look like the jilted bride, he'd move on to his next target, and the cycle would continue. But the Laurent women didn't take the easy way. "The wedding happens," I said slowly. "All 300 guests attend. Cameron shows up expecting his perfect day, but instead of vows..." Tobias caught on immediately. "You present the evidence. In front of everyone. His family, my family, our friends, his colleagues. I want witnesses." Kennedy's eyes went wide. "Nay, that's brutal," I finished. "He was planning to humiliate me privately and steal everything my grandmother built. I'd rather humiliate him publicly and make sure he never does this again." Vanessa was nodding, fierce determination replacing the shame in her eyes. "I'll testify. I'll stand right beside you and tell everyone what he did to me." Tobias looked at me for a long moment. "This will be nuclear. Are you absolutely sure?" I thought about my grandmother's words. "Baby girl, there are two ways to handle a man who tries to con you. You can run and let him do it to someone else, or you can make sure he never forgets what happens when he underestimates a Laurent woman." "I'm sure," I said. "Let's end him." The next 24 hours were a blur of preparation. Tobias compiled evidence into a presentation: documents, timelines, bank records, the hotel security footage. Vanessa flew in from Seattle, ready to face the man who'd destroyed her faith in love. Kennedy helped coordinate logistics. The cathedral had AV equipment we could use. Security would be present anyway. We just needed to alert them there might be an incident. My mother called. We hadn't spoken in 6 months, not since our last fight about Cameron. "Naomi," she said, voice careful, "Kennedy told me what's happening tomorrow." I waited for the "I told you so" she'd earned, the reminder that she'd seen through him from day one. Instead, she said, "What do you need, sweetheart?" I broke. Actually broke, sitting on the floor of my grandmother's kitchen, crying into the phone. "I'm so sorry, Mom. You were right. You tried to tell me—" "Stop," she interrupted gently. "You're my daughter. You don't apologize for being human. You just tell me how I can help you be strong tomorrow." That's when I understood what real love looked like. Not the performance Cameron had given me for 3 years, but this, my mother, who had every right to be angry, choosing to be my armor instead. "Just be there," I whispered. "I need you there." "I'm already on my way." Cameron came home that night. All smiles and enthusiasm. He'd been at the venue, finalizing details, which I now knew meant he'd been with Brianna at their usual hotel. "Tomorrow," he said, kissing my forehead. "Tomorrow you become Mrs. Cameron Hartwell. Everything I've ever wanted." I smiled back, the performance of my life. "Everything?" He didn't catch the edge in my voice. That night I lay awake next to him, watching him sleep, wondering how I'd ever mistaken his attention for love. Every thoughtful gesture had been calculated. Every "I love you" had been an investment. Every moment of intimacy had been a transaction. At 2 a.m. my phone buzzed. Text from Tobias. "Equipment is set up. I'm ready." "But Naomi, you can still walk away. Just leave. Don't marry him. Don't confront him. Disappear and let the lawyers handle it." I stared at that message for a long time. Then I remembered something my grandmother told me when I was 10 years old, after I'd let a bully take my lunch money for a week straight. "Baby girl, you come from a line of women who don't break. We burn down anyone foolish enough to test us. Never let someone make you small. You're a Laurent. We don't run, we rise." I texted back, "I'm not running. I'm ending this." Wedding day. The morning arrived with perfect weather, clear skies, gentle breeze, the kind of day wedding planners dream about. The National Cathedral stood magnificent on Wisconsin Avenue, its Gothic spires reaching toward heaven like they were trying to convince God to look away from what was about to happen inside. I stood in the bridal suite, my grandmother's vintage Vera Wang altered to fit my frame, my makeup artist fussing over me while I stared at my reflection and felt absolutely nothing. Kennedy entered, closing the door behind her. Everyone's seated, 300 people. Cameron's at the altar with his best man. His mother is in the front row crying already. Good, I said flatly. Naomi. Kennedy hesitated. Are you absolutely sure about this? I turned to face her. He was going to rob me, humiliate me, and disappear to a country with no extradition. Yes, I'm sure. My mother knocked and entered, stunning in navy blue, her eyes red but her spine steel. She took one look at me and nodded. You look like your grandmother, she said. She'd be so proud of you right now. Would she? Baby, Josephine Laurent once caught a man trying to forge her signature on a property deed. She didn't call the police. She called the Washington Post, made sure everyone knew his name, his face, and exactly what kind of man he was. He left D.C. and never came back. She squeezed my hand. You're about to do the same thing. She'd call it justice. A text came through from Tobias. Vanessa's here. Front row, left side. I'm in the back with the equipment. One word from you and we're ready. I looked at my mother, my cousin, my reflection in the mirror wearing my grandmother's dress. Then I picked up my bouquet, white roses, just like Grandma Jo had carried, and made my choice. Tell them the bride is ready. The music began. Pachelbel's canon, just like we'd planned. The doors opened and I stood at the back of that cathedral, every single person turning to look at me. Cameron stood at the altar in his custom Tom Ford tuxedo, that $1,000,000 smile I'd once found charming. His best man beside him, his mother dabbing her eyes, 300 witnesses to what he thought would be his greatest con. I walked down that aisle alone. My mother had offered to escort me, but I'd declined. This was something I needed to do by myself. Each step felt like walking through fire. Every face I passed, friends, family, colleagues, all of them expecting a wedding, none of them knowing they were about to witness an execution. I reached the altar. Cameron's eyes were shining with what I used to think was love. Now I recognized it for what it was. Victory. He thought he'd won. The officiant, Reverend Thompson, smiled warmly. Dearly beloved, we are gathered here today. Stop, I said. Reverend Thompson blinked. I'm sorry? I turned to face the guests, my voice carrying through the cathedral's acoustics. Before we begin, there's something everyone here needs to see. Cameron's smile flickered. Naomi, what are you? I was going to marry this man today, I continued, speaking over him. I was going to promise him my life, my love, my trust, and my future. But 48 hours ago, I discovered the truth about who Cameron Hartwell really is. Murmurs rippled through the cathedral. Cameron's mother sat up straighter. His best man took a small step away. Cameron's real name is Cameron Briggs, I said, letting each word land. He's been engaged 4 times in the past 6 years. Each time to a woman with significant family wealth. Each time he disappeared shortly after gaining access to their assets. Tobias appeared from the back, wheeling a presentation screen. The cathedral's AV system flickered to life. On the screen, documents, bank records, the timeline of Cameron's previous relationships, photos of him with different women, different rings, different promises. Gasps echoed off the vaulted ceiling. Cameron has $340,000 in gambling debts, I continued, narrating like I was presenting to a board of directors. He owes money to online betting sites, underground poker games, and private lenders who don't file taxes or paperwork, the kind of creditors who get very creative when payments are late. I clicked to the next slide. Vanessa's face appeared, along with court documents from Seattle. This is Vanessa Pierce. 3 years ago, Cameron convinced her to invest $200,000 in a fake business opportunity. 2 weeks after their courthouse wedding, he disappeared with her money. She's here today to make sure I don't become another statistic. Vanessa stood from the front pew, facing the crowd with the kind of courage that comes from finally refusing to carry shame that was never yours to begin with. He told me his mother had cancer, Vanessa said, voice shaking but clear. I wired $50,000 for experimental treatment. His mother is alive and well. She's sitting right there." Cameron's mother made a sound like she'd been punched. I advanced the presentation. Cameron planned to access my family's trust 2 weeks into our honeymoon. If that failed, he'd manufacture a family emergency and ask for an immediate fund transfer. Then he'd disappear to Grand Cayman. The airline receipt appeared on screen, one-way ticket, departing the day after our honeymoon was supposed to end. "My name isn't on this ticket," I said, "but someone's is. A woman named Brianna Kent, his assistant, the woman he's been having an affair with for the past 8 months. I clicked again. Hotel security footage. Cameron and Brianna entering a room in Arlington. Date stamped 3 weeks ago, while he was supposedly working late. The cathedral erupted, people shouting, standing, recording on their phones. Cameron's best man stepped completely away from him. His mother buried her face in her hands. Cameron tried to speak, voice strangled. "This is insane. Naomi, you're having some kind of breakdown." "The only thing breaking down is your con," I said coldly. I clicked to the final slide. A recorded phone call, audio crystal clear through the cathedral's sound system. Cameron's voice. 48 hours, then everything's in motion. She suspects nothing. She's too in love to see straight. Yeah, V already has the tickets. I'll be in Grand Cayman before she realizes what happened. Silence. Complete, suffocating silence. Then Cameron's mother stood up, her voice shaking with rage. "Is any of this true?" Cameron turned to face her, opened his mouth. Nothing came out. Vanessa spoke into the silence. "Every word is true. I have documentation of everything he took from me. I've already filed statements with DC Metro Police." I looked at Cameron, really looked at the man I'd planned to spend my life with, and felt nothing but pity. "I was going to marry you because I thought you loved me," I said. "But the only thing you ever loved was what I could give you, so here's what you're getting instead." I handed him an envelope. Restraining order. Fraud charges filed with the DC Metro Police and the FBI. Civil lawsuit for attempted theft, fraud, and emotional damages. And officers are waiting outside to escort you out. On cue, 2 uniformed police officers entered from the side door, walking calmly down the aisle like this was just another Tuesday. "Cameron Briggs," one of them said, professionally neutral, "you're under arrest for fraud, attempted grand larceny, and conspiracy to commit theft. You have the right to remain silent." Cameron tried to run, made it 3 steps before they grabbed him. The handcuffs clicked shut in front of 300 witnesses in a cathedral on what was supposed to be his biggest payday. As they walked him toward the exit, I called after him. "Oh, and Cameron? That preliminary trust document I signed? My attorney informed me it's invalid without a marriage certificate. You were always going to walk away with nothing." His face went white, then red. Then he started screaming, struggling against the officers, dignity completely shattered. They dragged him out, while 300 people watched in absolute stunned silence. Would you have the courage to walk down that aisle knowing what she knew? Confrontation or escape? Comment below. The cathedral stayed silent for maybe 10 seconds after Cameron disappeared. Then it exploded. People were standing, shouting, crying, recording, calling people who weren't there. Cameron's mother was sobbing. His best man had vanished entirely. My own family looked shell-shocked. Reverend Thompson approached me carefully. "Ms. Laurent, I don't quite know what to say." "You could start with congratulations," I said. "I just avoided the worst mistake of my life." He actually smiled. "Congratulations, my dear. Your grandmother would have been very proud." Kennedy rushed up, grabbed me in a hug. "Oh my God, Nay, that was the most badass thing I've ever seen." My mother appeared next, tears streaming down her face, but she was smiling. Actually smiling. "Mom, don't you dare apologize," she said fiercely. "You just did what every woman dreams of doing. You looked a con man in the face and said, 'Not today.' I have never been more proud to be your mother." Tobias approached, carefully disconnecting his equipment. "The police got everything they need. Between the evidence we compiled and the public scene he just made, he's finished." Thank you, I said, for everything. He looked at me with something I couldn't quite read. You didn't need me. You would have figured this out on your own. Maybe. But I'm glad I didn't have to. Vanessa was suddenly there, hugging me tight. Thank you, she whispered. Thank you for making sure he doesn't do this to anyone else. Thank you for being brave enough to help me. The reception, obviously, was cancelled, but my mother, in true Diane Laurent fashion, had called ahead and redirected everything to our family home in Georgetown. If we've got food, music, and liquor paid for, she announced to the remaining guests, we're damn well going to use it. Consider this a celebration of Naomi's freedom. About 150 people showed up, the ones who understood what they'd just witnessed, who wanted to support rather than gossip. We drank champagne, ate the expensive catering, and danced to the string quartet I'd hired. It was the best almost wedding I'd ever attended. Around midnight, I found myself in my grandmother's garden, still in her wedding dress, looking up at the stars. Tobias appeared beside me with 2 glasses of champagne. Thought you might need this, he said. I took one, clinked it against his. To burning down con men. To women who refuse to be victims. We drank in comfortable silence for a moment. What happens now? I asked. Cameron will serve time. With Vanessa's case, plus yours, plus 2 other women who came forward after today's, let's call it a performance. He's looking at years. His gambling creditors are very interested in his arrest, too. He's got bigger problems than prison time. Good. And you? Tobias asked carefully. What happens with you? I looked at this man who'd helped me reclaim my power, who'd asked for nothing except the chance to stop a bad man from winning. I figure out who I am without him, I said, without all the lies he told me about myself, without the constant questioning if someone loves me or loves my last name. For what it's worth, Tobias said quietly. Anyone who can't see your value without a bank statement isn't worth your time. What you did today, that took courage most people don't have. Something shifted between us. Not romance, not yet, but the recognition that sometimes the right people show up at exactly the right time. Tobias, I said, would you want to get coffee sometime, when this isn't all so fresh and complicated? He smiled, a real smile that actually reached his eyes. I'd like that. 6 months later, Cameron was sentenced to 3.5 years for fraud, attempted grand larceny, and conspiracy. 3 other women came forward with similar stories after my cathedral showdown went viral. He'd been running this con for almost a decade. His gambling creditors sued him separately. He'd spend the rest of his life paying off debts he'd never actually clear. I heard through Kennedy that his mother refused to visit him in prison. His father released a statement saying Cameron had made choices no parent could defend. The cathedral video had over 15 million views. I'd been featured in Forbes, the woman who turned her wedding into a fraud takedown. The Washington Post did a full profile. 3 women reached out to me saying my story gave them the courage to leave their own suspicious relationships. I'd become accidentally famous for refusing to be a victim. Vanessa and I stayed close. She moved to D.C., started working at a nonprofit that helps women escape financial abuse. We had coffee every week, 2 women who'd survived the same con man and came out stronger. My mother and I were closer than ever. She'd moved into the guest house on my property, and we had dinner together 3 times a week. Turns out, she'd been waiting for years to say, I told you so, but what she actually said was, I'm just glad you're okay. And Tobias, he appeared at my gate on a Saturday morning with 2 coffees, oat milk, 2 sugars, cinnamon, exactly how I took it. He'd memorized it over the months we'd spent working together, building from professional acquaintances to genuine friends to something neither of us had planned. I know we said we'd keep things casual. He started. That nervous smile I'd learned meant he was about to say something real. I raised an eyebrow. We did say that. And I know your last relationship was complicated. That's putting it mildly. He handed me the coffee. I'm not him. I'm not after your money or your name or anything except you. Just you. The woman who faced down 300 people and chose truth over comfort. That's who I'm asking to dinner. An actual dinner, with the clear intention of this being a date. I looked at this man who'd helped me reclaim my life, who'd never asked for anything except the chance to help me win. I thought about my grandmother's words. The right man will see you, baby girl. Not your portfolio. You. One dinner, I said. One dinner, he agreed. But we both smiled, because we knew it wouldn't stop at one. 3 months after that. Tobias and I were sitting in my grandmother's garden on a Sunday morning, him reading the Post, while I reviewed a new venture proposal. His coffee sat next to mine on the wrought iron table. Companionable silence, the kind that comes when two people are genuinely comfortable together. My phone buzzed. Text from my mother. Bring Tobias to dinner tonight. And tell him I'm making my special cassoulet, so he better come hungry. I showed him the text. My mother wants you at family dinner. That's basically the Laurent seal of approval. Are you ready for that? He set down his paper, looked at me with those careful eyes that saw everything. I've been ready since the day you walked down that aisle and chose yourself. Everything after that is just bonus. I felt something settle in my chest. Not the anxious am I enough feeling I'd carried with Cameron, just peace, certainty, the quiet knowledge that this was right. I love you, I said. Simple, direct, true. Tobias reached across the table, took my hand. I love you too. Your stubbornness, your courage, your absolutely terrifying ability to plan revenge, all of it. We sat there in my grandmother's garden, surrounded by 4 generations of Laurent women's strength, and I finally understood what Grandma Jo had been trying to tell me all along. The right love doesn't make you small. It doesn't ask you to ignore your gut or silence your voice or hand over your power. The right love makes you braver, stronger, more yourself. Cameron had tried to take everything from me, my money, my trust, my future. Instead, he gave me something infinitely more valuable, proof that I was strong enough to save myself. And in saving myself, I made room for someone who would never need saving from. That evening, I found an old letter from my grandmother tucked in her favorite cookbook. My mother must have left it there knowing I'd find it eventually. Naomi, my brilliant girl, by the time you read this, I'll be gone. But I need you to know, your worth is not in the buildings I built or the money I saved. It's in the spine you inherited from every Laurent woman who came before you. Men will try to take from you. Let them try. You come from a line of women who don't break. We burn down anyone foolish enough to test us. When the right man comes, you'll know because he'll bring kindling to your fire, not water. Choose yourself first, always. The rest will follow. Love, Grandma Jo. I folded the letter carefully, smiling through tears. That night at dinner, Tobias fit seamlessly into my family's chaos, debating politics with my mother, making my cousins laugh, treating me like I was precious but never fragile. After dinner, we stood on the back porch of the house 5 generations of Laurent women had called home, and I realized something profound. I'd spent 3 years with a man who made me question my worth every single day. I'd spent 6 months with a man who made me certain of it. That's the difference between performance and love, between transaction and truth, between a con man and a partner. Cameron had tried to write my story. Instead, I wrote his ending and my new beginning. Naomi got her justice and found love with someone who saw her, not her bank account. Have you ever had to choose between love and self-respect? Drop your story below. Let's celebrate the ones who chose themselves.